Meanwhile, on the foreign policy front, everyone knows Trump is coming, and that is shaping all the reactions in ways that are both good and bad. So, last night, Israel announced that it would approve a ceasefire with Lebanon. It's really a ceasefire with Hezbollah. There's always this big issue with regard to the war in Lebanon for Israel, which is that the Lebanese government is basically a meat puppet for Hezbollah. So if you're going to war with Hezbollah, are you at war with the Lebanese government? Are you trying to strengthen parts of the Lebanese government at the expense of other parts of the Lebanese government, namely Hezbollah, which is not just a terrorist group, it's a political party in Lebanon, and the political party that is most in control of many of the military resources and provide an actual threat to the Lebanese armed forces? Yeah, so all of that's very complicated. Israel announced that it would approve a ceasefire with Lebanon. President Biden announced the ceasefire last night. He, of course, was very happy about this, but we'll explain the underlying dynamics. The reason the ceasefire got signed is because Israel just wants to get beyond Biden. It is that simple. It is that simple. It's a 60-day ceasefire. There are 56 days until this schmuck leaves public office. That is not a coincidence. Israel is simply attempting to get beyond the Biden presidency for a wide variety of reasons we'll discuss in a moment. Here is Joe Biden.
Just as the Lebanese people deserve a future of security and prosperity, so do the people of Gaza. They too deserve an end to the fighting and displacement. The people of Gaza have been through hell. Their world's absolutely shattered.
What a schmuck he is.
Far too many civilians in Gaza have suffered far too much. And Hamas has refused for months and months to negotiate a good faith ceasefire and a hostage deal. And so now Hamas has a choice to make. Their only way out is to release the hostages, including American citizens, which they hold. In the process, bring an end to the fighting, which would make possible a surge of humanitarian relief. Over the coming days, the United States will make another push with Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and others to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. With the hostages released and the end of the war without Hamas in power, that becomes possible.
Okay, so let's point out at this point that his immediate turn from Lebanon to Gaza is a great indicator as to what Joe Biden is, which is a complete befuddled moron when it comes to foreign policy. When he says that he's going to attempt to achieve a ceasefire with the help of Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar, those are all cutouts for the Iranian position at this point. Qatar was always a cutout for the Iranian position, which is why Hamas was housed there. Hamas leadership left Qatar and went to Turkey, which is another one of the nations that he has called. Turkey has said that Israel is conducting a genocide. That is said by the dictator Erdogan, who has been the provoker and the instigator of massive human carnage in the Middle East, including in Syria and including in Armenia. Egypt, meanwhile, will not open its border, the Rafah crossing, to allow any of the Palestinians out, even temporarily, so they can be in a safer place, because they don't want the Palestinians, not one of them. And those are the people who are going to be brokering some sort of deal in the Gaza Strip. Yeah, we'll see how that works out. Okay, so in order to understand the dynamics of this particular ceasefire deal, you have to see what everybody's saying about it. So what Biden is saying there is something that's slightly different from what Netanyahu is saying in Israel. So Prime Minister Netanyahu put out a statement last night, and he said, the duration of the ceasefire depends on what happens in Lebanon. We'll enforce the agreement and respond forcefully to any violation. Together, we'll achieve victory. He said, we will complete the elimination of Hamas, bring back our abductees, ensure Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel, and safely return northern residents to their homes. The war will not end until all its goals are achieved, including the safe return of northern residents. This will happen just as it did in the south. To the residents of the north, I'm proud of you and your resilience. I'm fully committed to your security, rebuilding your communities, and securing your future. And then he suggested that a wide variety of achievements have been actually done by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, which of course is true. I mean, let's just point out that in Lebanon, Israel lost a grand total in terms of killed in action of 79 soldiers, while completely destroying 80% of Hezbollah's entire arsenal, killing all of its leadership, legitimately all of its leadership, like 3 levels deep, and wiping out its presence on Israel's northern border. It's an amazing military accomplishment, like one of the great military accomplishments of modern history. So what exactly has Israel done, according to Netanyahu? We destroyed significant portions of Iran's air defense, missile production capabilities, and key elements of its nuclear program. Preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons remains my top priority. So one of the things that's happening here is that Netanyahu is attempting to rearm, rest up forces in case of a potential conflict with Iran more directly if Iran continues to pursue a nuclear program. 2, Gaza. We dismantled Hamas brigades, according to Netanyahu, killed approximately 20,000 terrorists, eliminated senior leaders, and freed 154 hostages. We remain committed to bringing all abductees home and eradicating Hamas. So in other words, there's not going to be any sort of deal where Israel gives up control of the Gaza Strip to UNIFIL or to any other sort of Hamas cutout. 3, Judea and Samaria. We have neutralized hundreds of terrorists, destroyed terror infrastructure, and reached every stronghold of terror. So that's been a front that has largely been ignored by the international media. There have been a massive number of attempted terror attacks in the so-called West Bank, that's Judea and Samaria, against Jews who are living in those particular areas. And Israel has performed extraordinary anti-terror operations in places like Jenin and Nablus in order to ensure security. Yemen, says Netanyahu, we struck the Houthi-controlled port of Hodeidah with unprecedented force. Iraq, we successfully thwarted numerous drone attacks and continue to address challenges there. Syria, we systemically block Iran, Hezbollah, and the Syrian army from transferring weapons to Lebanon. Assad must understand he's playing with fire. So there he is threatening Assad, do not try to rearm Lebanon. We've disarmed Lebanon. We are not going to allow you to rearm Lebanon. And Lebanon, Hezbollah attacked us on October 8th. It is no longer the same Hezbollah. We have set them back decades, eliminated Nasrallah and senior operatives, destroyed most of their rockets, dismantled their terror infrastructure near our border. Strategic targets across Lebanon have been hit. Beirut trembles. So he says that when it comes to the ceasefire, he says there are 3 reasons they're going along with the ceasefire. 1, focus on the Iranian threat. So again, the idea here is that Israel needs to rearm and rest up and remain fresh and consolidate resources for a possible conflict with Iran, not just via its proxies, but if Iran accelerates its nuclear program. 2, replenishing and upgrading our forces with advanced weaponry to ensure the safety of our soldiers and strengthen our capabilities. Okay, that right there is a critique of Biden. The reason they have to replenish and upgrade forces with advanced weaponry is because Biden's been slow walking this. Basically, what Netanyahu is doing here is he is attempting to allow for the Trump administration to come in and remove the arms embargo that Biden has placed on Israeli soldiers. I happen to know from insiders on the ground over here that a significant number of Israeli troops have died due to lack of resources, thanks to the Biden administration slow walking basic things. Like, for example, artillery rounds or bulldozers that are necessary to take out infrastructure in southern Lebanon. Okay, so Netanyahu is saying openly here that Biden has basically slow-walked the aid, and we're getting past Biden. And finally, isolating Hamas. Since the second day of the war, Netanyahu says Hamas has relied on Hezbollah joining the fight. With Hezbollah out of the equation, Hamas is now left isolated, allowing us to increase pressure on them and aid in the sacred mission of freeing our hostages. Okay, he is right about that, by the way. Hezbollah said at the very beginning of the war, when they opened up rocket fire on northern Israel, Nasrallah, who's now dead, the leader of Hezbollah, he said the Lebanese front will not rest until a truce is reached in Gaza. Well, I'm wrong. You're resting now, and the truce is not reached in Gaza. So now it turns out that Hamas is isolated. Now, that does not mean that Joe Biden is not going to attempt to force Israel and cudgel Israel into some sort of agreement with regard to Hamas. One of the things that Netanyahu was attempting to avoid here was the U.S. on Biden's way out abstaining from some sort of UN Security Council resolution condemning Israel for its action inside Lebanon. And probably the bargain here was he gives Biden the so-called win of a ceasefire in the north, and then Biden vetoes any attempted UN Security Council resolution with regard to Lebanon or Gaza. Now the question is going to be whether Biden even remotely keeps his word. I would assume that that's the deal that's happening behind closed doors there. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.